welcome back to my channel. And welcome to another video where we are discussing even more of ugly palettes. Obviously, in my opinion, beauty is disgustingly subjective. But my first video of this and my second video of this did very well. I had a little bit of a blow up thanks to Smoky Glow. And this whole ranting, roasting ugly palettes has sort of become a thing that I've seen a couple people do. It brings so much joy to my salty heart. And as I go through and back in the history of eyeshadow palettes, ones that I've purchased, ones that I've seen, ones that I've decluttered, I feel like I have a lot more insight into what I like and insight into what I consider to be a well-curated palette, that I look at some things and I'm just like, that wasn't thought through very well. Obviously, if I talk about a palette that you absolutely love, that is fan-tucking-fastic, you keep doing you, boo-boo. These are just my personal opinions discussing palettes that I believe or think for one reason or another are visually non-appealing to me. And we're gonna start out right out of the gate with one that retrospectively, I suppose it was trying to be ugly. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek being headache-inducing. That was kind of sort of the marketing trope that they were going for. But Too Faced, in all of their intelligence, were like, all right, let's collab with this something something of Real Housewife of Somewhere and come out with the Pretty Mess collection. Now, clearly, it is subjective in the sense of not everyone gets agita when it comes to this really stupid, ridiculous layout. I believe it was the Colored Rain Precious Gems one that gave Kimberly Clark a massive amount of agita. And sort of in the same vein, this palette, it's just like pretty mess, definitely. Not entirely sure about pretty. It was supposed to be this, like, I don't even know. The whole collection was very irreverent, very in your face. I didn't know if it was supposed to exude luxury. There was a lot of fake holographic and gold accents to the packaging. So I don't know if we were trying to get the luxury effect. It was more like cheap and trashy, which I believe someone in my original anti-haul where I discussed this collection was like,
well, that's her aesthetic and you don't know anything and you're stupid.
I mean, I will admit to not knowing anything about this particular person or the show that they're on or what their aesthetic or what their whatever is. But to me, just someone who's going in to buy an eyeshadow palette for whatever, this is not the one. I hate the mishmash of colors all up in the whatever. You waste so much space. You drive the price up because it costs more to die, cast, and cut out those eyeshadow layout than it does just straight up circles or straight up squares. It was a super basic pinky ready toned with a hint of neutrals palette. They did the same thing with the Amor Caliente palette. Too Faced, like Colourpop, when it comes to certain things, really do enjoy just recycling the same thing over and over and over again. But to try to throw the people off our tracks, we're gonna put it in ostentatious and hopefully distracting packaging so that they don't notice that it's the same color story over and over again. I just aesthetically, color theory wise, this whole palette was it was just there. It was kind of like Too Faced. I mean, they're still in it. But when that one was done and the Pretty Rich one was done, it was just this mishmash, agglomeration like I typically do. I'm having a stroke already. But it was just this whole collection of just like random crap, random packaging, random themes, random collabs, just thrown in different like super ostentatious, eye-catching packaging. When this was released, it was the peak of Too Faced being a packaging company that occasionally put good makeup in said packaging. Okay, this next one, once again, as always, mainly subjective. But Sugarpill, a company that I absolutely love. I have grown up with them through my very baby early stages of YouTube and pre-YouTube. I love a lot of their products, but oh boy, when they decided they were gonna release those Capsule palettes. I kind of stood over in the corner, just eye twitching ever so slightly. I don't know if it's because I'm old and in my own old age, I have learned that I enjoy a certain semblance of simplicity in some things in my life. Clearly not how I dress. But these palettes, they look like pills. That's cute. I love it. Sugarpill. Let's take it back to our roots. And then we're gonna open that shiz up and it is going to be filled with a mishmash of varying colors and varying shapes, not shapes, sizes. And this shiz is just gonna be all over the place. Now, somebody told me apparently that the largest one is supposed to be a blush, and that's why it's so big. Okay, you know I don't like eyeshadow palettes with face products in it, and I just wish they had taken like the capsule. I love that. That's great. Shut up and take my money. I'm there. But then when you open it, and it's just this whole little like, well, we've got this size here and this size over here and this one over here. And I understand they're like capsule collections, so it's like greatest hits, and that's why they're all in there. But the color stories are all kinds of what I was like, please just give me the capsule packaging, open it up, and let it be a row of y'all's singles. That would have made me, I would have bought that in a heartbeat. But looking at these, like I said, I don't know what it is about myself. If I'm too old, I'm not hip enough. Butte Bean makes these palettes. She creates the most amazing, beautiful looks with them. And I'm like, I guess I just suck at makeup. But I really just couldn't with these palettes. The color stories were just, I mean, they kind of, the color stories exuded sort of the same chaoticness as the Jeffree Star Original Beauty Killer palette, where yeah, you had some standout shades, but it was like all single standout shades rather than a completely cohesive color story. It just absolutely did not do it for me, and I think maybe I'm not creative enough to understand the intricaticities of that sort of palette. I enjoy the ease of the Colourpop monochromatic palettes, and I know a lot of people love these palettes. Just recently someone told me that they were really worth the money. I would rather invest my money in one of their pro palettes, but for these there was just one big giant headache. Okay, another subjective. I feel like I did the disclaimer in the beginning. All of these opinions are subjective. They're opinions. That's exactly what they are. So I don't need anyone getting butthurt and upset in the comments below. You do you, I'll do me. Urban Decay, a brand that I haven't purchased from in a long while, and sort of during the era of their what I would consider descent, they did the Distortion palette, which is essentially translated to,
hey, let's throw some transformative shades up in this palette so hopefully it'll distort how absolutely uninspired the color story is.
I mean, for Urban Decay, this I will never, this saddens me. This is a part of makeup history that saddens me. At one point, Urban Decay was the brand to go to for crazy, bright, fantastical colors. They made all sorts of beautiful, I mean, these are the people who brought us the electric palette, which was the colorful palette of colorful palettes. And as they sort of just began going off into the era of mediocrity, they then give us this thing where it's, I feel like in today's market of what are colorful palettes, how many of those are out there and what they have to offer, looking at these shades, yeah, they're okay. And then when you have the uninspired bottom rows, and then on top of it, it kind of pulls a KVD Alchemist palette where it gives us these color transforming shades. So rather than giving us an actually unique and beautiful color story, we're going to give you a sort of mass selection of colors and then a row of distortion transformative shades to give you, I don't know, a level of depth that we couldn't actually provide with real colors in the palette. I mean, I would love for Urban Decay to have a comeback, for Urban Decay to not release something that is just outdated and tired and old. Urban Decay has reached the level of adulthood where they want to be in bed by 9 o'clock. They ain't out here partying at midnight in the club, coming home at 4 o'clock. No, 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 no. And this palette just really, it was just so little. I was like, you could have done so much more. But instead, like a lot of the mainstream brands that we have learned, they just didn't put in the effort. They didn't care enough to give us something interesting. Okay, another one that is ugly. Maybe you love this, I don't know, but this is the Morphe Glisten Up, which was their Pride palette. Don't know how I feel about that trope of marketing. But you look at this thing and it's just like, yay, a bunch of crumbly glitters in cheap holographic packaging. I mean, if this was done for Pride, what a disrespect to Pride this is. It's just like, all right, let's throw up a bunch of bright colors into this thing. I am not a huge fan of Morphe's typical formula. I don't think Morphe is a company that is going to have cornered the market on superior quality pressed glitters. I've tried pressed glitters from high-end companies that I don't like, so I don't think Morphe is going to be hitting that shiz out of the park. Especially when you're just looking at it and you look down at it and you're like, oh yeah, one swipe in that and glitter is going to be everywhere. Gonna be on my face, on my fingers, in my hair, on the walls, on the ceiling, on my cat, on everywhere except for where I want it to go. And it is going to be crumbly and it is going to be nasty. It's not going to wear well. I mean, just can you take a minute to look into those pans? Do you look in those pans and think, yes, this is going to be a sublime, beautiful, glitter-filled experience? No, it's not. It's some cheaply made pressed glitters that they had done in rainbow colors that they're now putting in cheap holographic packaging for Pride. That's literally all that they did, and that's all they could bring to Pride. Okay, here's one that I've actually purchased. So, you know, there's this, we make mistakes. Mistakes were made, but one for Mel Cosmetics, a company that typically, in my opinion, makes beautiful, beautiful color stories. And not only beautiful color stories that are very unique, very different to what we see on the market. And that can be said of this palette, whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But they released their Millennial Pinks palette, which is a pink palette. You got like some rosy tones, then we've got a silver, then we've got a black, and we've got a gray. I was a moron. I purchased this palette after anti-hauling it. I regret buying it. The quality was awful. And looking at it now, just in my heart of hearts, I shouldn't have bought it because it's ugly. I'm sorry, Melt, who looks at this and thinks, oh yes, decadent. I look at this and think somebody punched me in the eye. Which, hey, if that's your thing, you do you. Obviously, I do not skew for a natural, normal-looking aesthetic. But if you're gonna give me punched in the eye chic, I think I deserve a little bit more than these kind of piddly, slightly rosy tones and a gray and a black and a silver that did absolutely nothing. I mean, even with a name like Millennial Pinks, I mean, it should have been more like Millennial, maybe. I just had a thought. Maybe this is like, you know, an impressionistic art. And this palette is sort of a colorful representation of what's going through the millennial decade's mind, which is basically nothing but unprecedented chaos and dread and stress. And so they decided to personify that in this palette, which is why it looks like an absolute mess. They took what is inside of my brain and put it into eyeshadow format. Maybe that's what they were going for. But if that's not what they were going for, I don't know what it is, and it's not very pretty. I just like, why did I buy this? Why did I buy this mishmash of just it's not cute. It's just like I said, some random rosiness. They could have done so much more with a pink toned palette. Why did we have to put a red, I mean, a silver, a gray, and a black. Like, they could have taken that, like, what's that one stack that they have? The baby girl stack or something like that. That's all red and pinks. Give me a big version of that. Don't give me this sad, depressed little section of pinky reds and then throw on some editorial grungy shades to make it unique and different. Is ugly. It is like, you notice, this is another thing. We're getting a little whatever. You notice when a color theory is popular. Like, I believe when Natasha Denona released her Love palette, that's when a lot of other pinky palettes were coming out. You notice that there weren't any companies taking the millennial pinks color theory, you know, the pinks with the black and the gray and the silver. They weren't running with that. You know, Mel Cosmetics was the one to do it, and that's it. No other companies were jumping on the bandwagon thinking, oh boy, slightly rosy pinky tones with a black and a gray and silver, or what is next in makeup history. Because it's not. The colors were awful. It's awful. I shouldn't have, for so many reasons, I shouldn't have bought it. Another one is a little bit, a lot bit more recent. BH Cosmetics Full On Crazy. This whole thing made me sad. Y'all know your girl vibes with the spookiness. And when you have brands that start coming out with spooky themed makeup, you honestly hope for the best. And then BH Cosmetics came out with this collection that was marketing on the tropes of crazy girlfriends, which I have issues with in and of itself. And then they give me one of the things that I hate most. You all know that is literal palette throw up. When companies take a theme and they're like, all right, this is a theme we could do really, really well. Or this is a theme where we could literally shake the eyeshadow box and get 15 miscellaneous, totally random colors, put it in a palette, and call it the full-on crazy. And because it's a palette that's aesthetic is full-on crazy, it totally makes sense that all the colors make absolutely no sense. Because it's crazy. And that's aesthetic. And that's thematic. No! That's stupid. Like, there are so many different things they could have done in the horror, Halloween-y, whatever genre to make a really nicely themed palette, when instead we get a palette about being a crazy person that has a completely disjointed color theory that even if you wanted to do crazy person makeup, you couldn't because the color story was just absolutely absurd, like chaotic. Does not even begin to describe what this color theory was doing to my head. The little one wasn't anywhere near as bad, but the big one, they're just like, all right, pink, boom, blue, red, black, yellow, just all of these. It's like they were just like, all right, let's take, like, you know, when you go to like Spirit Halloween and they have all those like cheap whatever compacts. They're like, all right, let's pick out all these primary colors from all these Halloween themed makeup compacts and put it in a palette. And I'm like, no! Gotta think. Gotta take a moment. You gotta create a theme. You gotta create an aesthetic. And then you gotta execute it with just a little bit more finesse than calling something crazy and then just throwing whatever shades you had on in the back and saying it's fine because it's a palette that's crazy. Okay, this one is obviously, once again with all these, subjective, so subjective, very subjective. I mean, companies, they just wilding out here. They not even trying anymore. But Colourpop, they did their Candyland collection, which your girl is a nostalgic person. I didn't buy this whatever because we're trying to be better. But okay, all right. On the outside, on paper, this looks okay. You know, you're like, all right, Candyland, candy, pastels, whatever. This is a really, really soft palette. I've tried pastels from Colourpop before, and for some reason, they're not very good at them. And I guess my issue with this, and why I consider the best part about this, Colourpop is turning into a less expensive Too Faced, where the best thing about something is the aesthetic they're trying to sell and the packaging. And so that's really nice. But if you really recall the game, the inspiration for this, that Candyland box and board, there were so many more colors than these faint, soft, subtle pastels. Nothing wrong with pastels. I am just saying there could have been so much more beautiful depth and breadth of color in this besides just like, okay, we're doing a candy theme, let's slap some like light cotton candy pastels on this thing. And I understand that we're kind of focusing on, I believe, the Lollipop Princess type thing. I mean, but we had Queen Frostine, we had Lord Licorice. I mean, there could have been so much more. Like, don't just say Candyland and just throw some whateverness into it. It's like with the Sailor Moon collection. Give it some thought. Maybe it's because I'm a writer or I'm a whatever that I'm very into like thematic and wanting to like really think things through and give them all kinds of whatever. But it could have been so much more better in the color theory. Give us rich gradation. Give us, candy isn't all just pastels and whatevers. There are rich, deep hues, and not just in candy in of itself, but from the game, from the artistic inspiration. But instead of doing that, we're just gonna slap Candyland on it, do something all nice and cutesy, and curate some pastels that we've probably got hanging around from that tie-dye collection we did, and stick them in this thematic Candyland packaging and call it a day. I hope y'all can at least somewhat understand my frustration in this scenario, because I feel like with companies recently, they have just sort of been doing the bare minimum, and they've been getting pats on the back all the way, which just lets them know that it's okay to do the bare minimum. I want to see more. I want more thematic elements. I want more depth. I want a palette that actually embodies the full color story of what they're supposedly getting inspiration from. Not going to talk about it in this one, but you best believe there's going to be another one, and we're going to be talking about the Colourpop Hocus Pocus palette, which is a perfect, these licensed collaborations tend to suffer from the most level of let's just do the least amount. We have the Candyland, we have the Sailor Moon, and we have the Hocus Pocus. They just don't, it's just so underwhelming. But because it's this fantastic licensed thing that everybody loves and we're so hyped and excited to get a makeup collaboration, that we just sort of look past all the faults and all the things that are lacking within the collaboration. So this may be a personal thing. I am a bit anal when it comes to that sort of thing. It could just be me. But personally, I really would like to see companies, especially Colourpop, because they've just been, like I said, they've just been wilding out here without a care in the world, just releasing whatever the flip they want. Woo! Willy-nilly. But personally, I would like to see brands and companies held to a higher standard for what they're trying to produce. Don't just be like, yeah, well, it's okay. No. It sucks. It's bad. It's ugly. It's stupid. They can and they would produce better products, but they're not doing it because they're not being held accountable. Well, I'm here to let them know that I'm not having that anymore. I don't care if I never receive a piece of PR from any of these companies, because so long as they're doing this shiz, I am going to talk about it. But yeah, that is what I have for y'all for this one. There will be another one. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about these palettes. Clearly, it's just my opinion. I'm just getting on here in front of a camera and having my own little fits. I would also love to hear about a palette that y'all think is lovely, because I can't tell you how many times y'all are like, hey, remember this palette? And I'm like, yes, I must have blocked that out of my mind, but you right, that ugly. So definitely leave that down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!